Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Automatic Pro. This is a device that plugs into your vehicle's onboard diagnostics port, and it reports back what the meaning of your check engine light is, but it also gives you a lot of additional data too, like your vehicle location in real time, where you parked your vehicle, the kind of gas mileage you're getting, individual trip recording, which you can then send over to other applications for expensing. A lot of cool stuff that this thing does in a very small package. And what attracted me to the product is the fact that it has a 3G radio built in also, so you don't have to have it paired up with a phone all the time. So you have a teenager in the house that's driving a vehicle of yours, you can install this in their car and get pushed back real-time data, including how fast they might be driving and a log of how often they may go over certain rates of speed too. Really cool product, and no subscription fee, $130 point of entry on this one. And I should mention, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid that full price for this device because I bought this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own, therefore. No one is paying for this review and no one is reviewing this content before it is posted. So let's get into what you do with this thing. It's very simple actually. You just plug this in under your dashboard. It doesn't always snap in. We installed this on my wife's 2016 Toyota Highlander, and you push it in until it stops getting pushed up, and then it will install itself. If you have your car on in accessory mode, you'll hear it beep when it gets its good connection, and then it's powered up and ready to go. There's no battery to install, nothing to die. It just gets powered by the port that's plugged into it. Setup wasn't too difficult. They've got a nice onboarding on their app, which is on Android and iOS. The only issues I ran into it was that it didn't go as smoothly as it should have. It failed a couple of times. I had to restart it. There was a firmware update involved that failed as well, but after about an hour or so, I got it going. I was about ready to call support when it finally decided to start working. The big issue I had with it, though, after everything was installed and operating, was that it didn't report back any data right away. So the first thing I did is I drove it around the neighborhood, but where I live, apparently I don't have a signal for this device's onboard 3G radio, so it wasn't until the next day when my wife actually drove outside of our immediate area that it started pushing data back, and it had recorded and stored all the trips that we had made previously. Now, this is not compatible with electric vehicles, so if you have a plug-in hybrid, it will not work with that. So Chevy Volts and the plug-in, the Ford Fusion Energy, for example, don't work with it, but traditional hybrids like the Prius do work, and they've got a great website at automatic.com/cars where you can put in the car that you want to look up, and it will tell you whether or not that it is supported. So my first car was a 93 Probe, so I decided to check the 96 Probe because that was the first year it had the OBD port built into it, and you can see what it supports here. They have some things like crash alerts. So if you do get into an accident, they have a call center that will call the phone or phones that you specify if there's an emergency. There's some other things like efficiency coaching and some other stuff that I'll get into here a little bit later in the review. So not too bad on the install, but if you don't have a signal where you live, you're going to be waiting a bit before you get some data back for it. And unfortunately, they don't have a coverage map on their website, which would be really helpful, because if you drive in areas where you never have coverage, this doesn't work at all, because even though you pair it up with a phone, it communicates data solely through the 3G network. It does store it, but if you don't have a signal anywhere, you'll never see the data. Now, like all devices in this century, it is controlled by an app, again, that runs on iOS and Android. Very attractive interface. It groups all of your trips together by day, so you can see exactly where your car was yesterday. It's got a nice map that draws a little line of your route that you took over the course of your driving experience, and it gives you some basic mileage and duration data there. I'll dig into one of those trips in a minute so you can see what it looks like. Now at the top there, you see it says it's driving, and if we were actually driving, I could click on that and see the real-time location of the vehicle, but right now the car is actually in my garage, and the reason why it is saying it's still driving is because the adapter went offline and that it lost its cellular signal. So you do pair your phone up with it to enhance its location accuracy when you're out driving, but it doesn't actually transmit any data back. I would have liked to have seen that as a fallback in case you run out of range. You can get your data. So right now we have to wait to actually go somewhere in order to get the rest of the data from the day's driving here. So that is my only gripe with it. Again, you're kind of dependent on the strength of that cellular signal. Let's dig now into one of my trips, though. You can see what kind of data it does record for the app. So when you drill into any day, you can see exactly how many miles you drove throughout the course of that day, or I can select an individual trip here like we'll do for this one. You get a nice map here of where the car went. You can even drill in deeper here and get an idea as exactly what streets were traversed in the course of that journey. You get a time and date stamp, the distance traveled, duration, efficiency in miles per gallon. I believe you can also tune this into liters and kilometers if you wish. It also estimates cost based on what you're reporting your current gas prices to be when you fill up. It does require some manual entry. I think right now it's doing it based on just national averages or regional averages for the cost of fuel based on the type of fuel that we specified for the vehicle in the app's configuration. And then it gives you an idea as to which locations she started and stopped at too by street address, which is pretty nice. There's a health option here so you can see what that check engine light really means. Right now the car has no issues at the moment. It shouldn't because it's pretty new. You also can then log your fill-ups over here and tell it what you put in your car and when and how much. And I believe it uses that to calculate how much those trips cost. Over on Insights here, when you get to the 30-day mark, it'll give you an analysis based on your driving habits, and it will point out things to you that you should be doing better. So if you're braking too hard or you're accelerating too fast or you're driving too fast, just in general, it's going to give you a recommendation based on all of those factors. I'm going to show you a different way to get that data pulled out in a second so you can see how really granular it gets in keeping track of your behavior while you're driving. And over in Glovebox is where you configure the number to dial if you have an accident. So you can set it up with some emergency contact numbers. So if there's an accident, they will call you as well as other people you specify to let them know, and they can even call first responders for you too. Now you're not just limited to using the Automatic app for analyzing your data, you can also send it to other places too. And I really like the fact that it works with if this then that, and you can find this site at IFTTT.com. And IFTTT connects things to each other based on triggers that happen, events that occur. So what I do with IFTTT now is when I upload a new video to my YouTube channel, it automatically sends that video to LinkedIn and to my Facebook page, so I don't have to do it manually. And what happens is that IFTTT is looking for a trigger, in this case a YouTube video being uploaded, and it does something with that based on what it is compatible with. And Automatic also works with IFTTT. So if I say instead of YouTube, go to my Automatic Pro, and it gives me some options for triggers that can set off events. So I set up something so that every time I complete a new trip, it will add a line to a Google spreadsheet. But you could also set events based on every time the ignition is turned on or off. And you can do some really crazy stuff here because you can create this trigger based on when the ignition is turned on and then connect it up with any of these apps to do something. So you could even create files in Dropbox or print something out. I mean, you can really get kind of nuts with it, but there's really just no limit to what you can connect your device up to and have it execute some kind of command. Now this is what the spreadsheet looks like, and it does give you slightly more data than you would get otherwise through the app. Now one thing I did have to do is add in the titles here at the top for each field. It did not do that for me automatically. I had to go dig into the IFTTT recipe that I created to get that. If you want to know how to do that, let me know. I'll post a secondary video up to show you where that data lives. But what you get here is the vehicle, of course, but you also get the miles traveled, the miles per gallon, so all the stuff we saw in the app. But there's some additional things like hard braking events. So every time my wife stepped too hard on the brake, it counted that and told me during that trip how many times that occurred. It also kept track of how many times she accelerated too quickly according to its built-in algorithm. It also gave me a log as to how often in duration the car was driving at over 70 miles per hour. Some of the data looks a little flaky to me because I don't know what this duration is. I'm assuming it's minutes, but it's showing me 47 minutes here for a trip time of only 40 minutes. So I'm not sure exactly what that number means. I'm going to have to dig further into that to find out. But it does give you an idea as to whether or not that car was driven over 70 miles an hour. But thankfully, the car with the kids in it did not go over 75 or 80 on any of these trips. You also get a map image. You get a Google Map link and both for the beginning and the end, as well as raw latitude and longitude data too, all getting logged into that spreadsheet every time that car starts and finishes a trip. So pretty cool stuff that you can get that data out in more ways, and there are a bunch of different ways to use this if you're a programmer too through their API. Now I have my Amazon Tap on the desk because this also works with Alexa. So you can ask it 3 different things. One is, where's my car? It'll tell you where your car was last seen. You can also check your fuel level. Unfortunately, my Toyota doesn't support that, but I can also ask it this. Ask Automatic, how much did I drive yesterday?
You drove 98 miles over 2.5 hours yesterday.
Now, all this connectivity is very cool, and it's nice that you can have this information at your fingertips whenever you want. But there are some privacy implications that I want you to think about with products like this when you buy them, in that when you plug this into your car, it is transmitting your vehicle's whereabouts every minute of the day, essentially, at least so long as the car is on. And the minute that car leaves your garage, it's starting to record data as to where it went, how fast it was going, and everything in between. And you need to think about whether or not you're comfortable with all of that data being stored in someone's database, essentially in perpetuity. Now, they have a very solid privacy policy on Automatic's website. They give you the ability to opt out of data storage. If you ever decide you don't want to use the product anymore, you can call them or contact them, and they'll scrub your data from their servers. But we have to trust that that's what they're doing. And this is one of those things where you just have to trust these folks. And it's not a company that I hadn't heard of really before a year or two ago when they started making these little devices. So you just need to keep that in mind, because Automatic may have a good privacy policy now. They have a very good policy of anonymizing your data if they ever share statistics and whatnot on their website or elsewhere. But at some point they could get acquired, and maybe that acquiring company doesn't have the same policy that Automatic does, and your data will be transferred along with all the other assets of the company. And that's another topic to talk about, which is what your data is to them as an asset. And I think there's actually a great amount of value that they're extracting from us users who are paying for their product with the data that our vehicles are collecting and transmitting. So think about this from the perspective of the auto industry, that if you as an automaker can go in and pull actual real-time diagnostic data from your competitors' vehicles and maybe yours as well, and see how everything stacks up and compares, that's going to be tremendously valuable. I think automakers would spend a fortune for that kind of data, especially because it's out there in the world, plugged into real vehicles, into an OBD port in real time, all over the place. And that is something that I think is really going to drive a bulk of their business to the point where they may end up giving these things away at some point. Because although it is $130, which is not inexpensive, if you think about how much you spend on your monthly data plan for your smartphone and compare it to $130 for hardware and service for this, clearly they're making money somewhere else, and it's likely based off the data you're sending. I don't think they're going to tell the Ford Motor Company where your Ford was every 5 minutes of the day, but they're going to aggregate that data and sell it as a product that you're providing free of charge to them while you're still paying $130 for this device when you plug it into your car. So just some things to keep in mind. If you're comfortable with that and you're getting great value out of the data that they're providing for you for your vehicle, great. But again, think about your privacy, and then think about how much money they're going to be making off the data that you're supplying to them for free. All that said, this is a really cool and useful product, especially for maybe people with older cars that lack all of that data that we get now in our current vehicles, and also for parents of teenagers who want to keep track of not only where their kids are at any given point in time, but also how they're driving, because again, it does keep information on speed and hard acceleration and other things that would indicate whether or not the child is driving recklessly on the road. And I think that would be very useful, perhaps even more valuable to a parent than perhaps the value that Automatic might be extracting from your data. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.